Hey everyone, got a very exciting topic for you today. Jonathan and I are going to be talking about what's going on in the world of single family and multifamily because we are now seeing lots of things that he and I have been talking about for a while. So how you doing, Jonathan?
I'm doing great. And it's funny that, we're supposed to be talking about multifamily and single family, and this is video number 4, and we finally hit the topic. So
Yeah, so I know we've been both seeing some data, and at least in the single family side, it's kind of frightening how right we've been. Right, the urban flight is real. Millennials are buying. We are seeing appreciation in the suburbs dwarf urban cities. We're seeing listings explode in the cities and be just record low in the suburbs. It's kind of just the perfect storm. And again, I think nationally, single family is up next year, and it's not a crash. I mean, there's so many people calling for a crash. It's just not possible. So, what are you seeing in multifamily?
multifamily is it's kind of like the tale of two cities, right? I mean, it's multifamily is doing well in the places where people are going,
Mm.
right? So uh, rents are holding up. In some MSAs, rent growth is doing quite well especially in the suburbs, right, where
Mhm.
people are wanting to go. Um, so it's holding up well there. It is really bad in some of the inner cities where the coronavirus in particular, and some of the protests. I think that's been overblown. I think it's really more about coronavirus. Um, has been has just pushed people over the edge who were thinking about buying, thinking about leaving the city, and that's pushed them over the edge. And there's nobody coming behind them to fill those apartments up right
Yeah.
now. So uh, that's causing rents in the major metros, that used to be the darlings of the multifamily world, especially for institutions.
Yeah.
Those rents are falling. I mean, they're falling by quite a bit. So, especially in San Francisco, that seems to be the place that's been hit the hardest.
Oh yeah,
Um,
30% for I think it
yeah,
was one bedrooms. I think it's crazy.
New York has been hit, but not to that extent. But it's still been hit pretty badly. And uh, but in the suburbs, things are strong, and in the markets where people are moving to, rents remain strong. But so it's a tale of two cities in that way. It's a tale of two cities in another way, which is that, or maybe it's a tale of three cities in another way. You've got your ABC class properties, right? And so your
Mm.
A is your new build, top of the market, best amenities, newest construction. You've got your B, which is sort of the top of the market of yesterday, and then you've got the C, which is like your top of the market of yesteryear, days of old. And and what you've got is the highest rents in A. You've got the next highest rents in B, and then C class properties are your working class, what
Mhm.
we call workforce housing. And what you're seeing uh, there is interesting. Rent collections in A and B have been pretty consistent throughout this pandemic. Now, to some extent, especially maybe more so at the B properties, this is dependent on the stimulus money. But I think a lot of those tenants tend to have the jobs that didn't go away, and in your K-shaped recovery, right?
Mhm.
Those folks are doing okay. They also have savings, so if they do lose their jobs, they've got savings to fall back on and continue to pay their rent. So collections have been off by a little bit, but not by that much. Where what the problem is C, and unfortunately we don't get real good data for C because nobody tracks it, because the institutions are only invested in A and B, and there's a lot
Mhm.
of data that is the market is generating to sell to those folks. They have good data. The C properties, more your mom and pop type investors. There's much less good data out there, but anecdotally what it looks like is times are tough. And
Oh yeah.
we know also that um, in recessions, those are the classes that get hit the hardest, right? The people with the jobs that are the first to cut, first to get cut, uh, they are the ones who take it on the chin more than anybody else. That's that lower leg of the K-shaped recovery that you've been talking about. So
Mhm.
if you have C properties, there is a substantial amount of pain there, and I think when we talk about these rent moratorium, the eviction moratoriums, that is really something that hits, I think, the C class
Mhm.
harder, because those are the people who are having a harder time paying rent and then can't be evicted. It's just not as much of a problem at the upper end. Um, so so there's that. Now, when I say tale of three cities, there is also the A class. There's a problem with A class in certain markets as well, because your A class, obviously, those are your most qualified tenants, highest income. You have almost no delinquency in those kinds of
Mhm.
apartments, right? So your rent collections are always very strong. But because your tenants are so strong, they are the people who, in a situation like today, are going to look around and say, "Why am I paying $1,800 or $2,000 a month in rent when I could go pay less than that for a house and build equity?" So
Mhm.
I'm gonna interest rates are at an all-time low. I'm going to take advantage of this. And I think especially in those more suburban metros down south, where the distinction between living in a high-rise apartment and and a house in terms of like your lifestyle is not as big as it is, say, in New York City. Like the attraction of living in a place like New York City is that you walk out your front door and everything is there, right? You've got all the places you want to go out and eat, the best
Mhm.
restaurants, the bars, places you can meet the opposite sex. Like, it's all right outside your doorstep. When you live in a place like, a lot of cities outside of the Northeast, you know, you're still getting into your car, driving across town, to do everything. And so why do that in a high rise when you could do that in a house,
Mhm.
right? And I think so the lifestyle stickiness of apartments isn't there in those markets. So at the top of the market, you're having a lot of people now decide, hey, why the hell am I living here?
Yeah.
I'm going to go buy a house instead. And on top of that, in some markets, you've got massive overbuilding.
Oh,
Like
exactly.
you've got especially in Texas, this is becoming a problem. The number of you got, like in Dallas Fort Worth, 30,000 units coming online this year,
Oh
right?
no.
So it's crazy, right? How much is coming online right at this point where people are asking themselves the question, do I want to live in an apartment or not? So A class is there, as we say often in this business, somebody will make money on that property. Might not be the guy who built it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Uh, it might be the guy who bought it for pennies on the dollar out of bankruptcy, or bought the note, the
It could
non-performing
be.
note,
Yeah.
but not necessarily the person who built it. And I think this is one of those times. Now, where does this lead us, right? This leads us to, if you want to invest right now, you want to be looking at B properties, because those are the most solid. The problem is everybody has come to that conclusion,
Mm.
and there's very little product on the market right now because sellers are looking at the world and going, we don't know where this is going.
Mhm.
But we're hoping it's going to get better. So sellers are holding their properties off the market. There's very little product. So prices are continuing to rise, even as the fundamentals are uncertain for B properties. For C properties and A properties, there may be bargains to be had coming up soon. And in those inner city, I don't know, inner city has the wrong connotation. In the urban cores, let's call them, um, in those markets, I think there's going to be some opportunity coming up soon. You can't have that kind of rent declines,
Yeah.
and not have some carnage along the way. And it won't be the deep pocketed people. I mean, the people who own thousands of units will be able to ride this out. It's going to be the the mom and pops who bought at the top,
Yeah.
who are going to be unable to service their debt, or they're just going to be looking at this and going, I don't want to. They might be able to service it, but they're going to go,
No.
I don't want to be paying $10,000 a month out of my own pocket to keep this building going, and they're just going to walk away, or they're going to sell for fire sale prices.
Yeah.
So I think that but it hasn't happened yet. It's going to take a little while for this to play through, but I think that uh, you know we may be looking at a situation where there's going to be a rare opportunity to pick up bargains in places like New York,
Yeah.
San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, like the places where that you could not access as a small investor before. 2021, 2022 may be your
Yeah.
moment. for
I agree with
for
that.
those
I'm
markets.
glad you put that year on it because that was going to be my next question. I do think it's 2022. I
Yeah.
think there's still enough pain. You still got to figure it out. There's always hope, like it'll get better. But yeah, I do think the mom and pop investors in the urban core, like again, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, very vertical areas, they're going to just have enough. If you bought after 2018,
Yeah.
maybe even 17.
It really depends on when you bought,
Yeah, of
right?
course.
And because if you bought early enough, then your basis is low, your debt
Actually,
service is low, unless you refinance. If you refinance at the
exactly.
top, yes.
It's when you put the debt on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's more precise, right? When you added the last time you added debt to
Exactly.
the property is what is going to determine this. So if you added debt at a high valuation, or if you bought at the top of the market, those are going to be the people who are going to have very hard time servicing their debt
Yes.
with higher occupancy, with higher vacancy. If you bought 2010, 2012, even
No
probably
new debt, you're
2015,
fine.
you're probably okay. You can ride it out. You're probably still making money even with some vacancy.
Probably.
So, you know,
Yeah.
you should be fine.
I
But
think that's the key. When was the debt placed? Again, I think 2018, maybe even 2017 vintage. And this is important for commercial debt, right? It's 3, 5, 7 years.
yeah,
So if you have a 2018 vintage and you're coming up for your 3 years, oh, you are not enjoying life right now, right?
yeah.
Your top line rent's down, your expenses are up, your vacancies are up. Shit, your rent growth is probably negative, right? When you're doing
Yeah.
it's just not a good thing.
But look, on the other hand, I think you had people who overpaid in some of the southern
Oh, for
suburban
sure.
markets who are now getting bailed out, right, by what's happening.
Ah,
Because,
the
right,
population,
yeah, they are getting
they got lucky.
they got lucky. They really did. Because, another interesting thing, we didn't talk about this in the economics section, but there is, I think, growing evidence that the economy was falling into recession by February because of the trade war. The trade war was pushing the country into recession. And it's all been, the COVID thing just obliterated
Everything, yeah.
any focus on that, and then overwhelmed whatever data. But there was definitely some indication that the economy was getting soft in February. And so had that happened, and I've been calling for this recession, to happen for some time. Had that happened, there would have been a lot of people who were going to find it very difficult to service their debt,
Yeah.
or refinance their debt because they overpaid. And those people now are like thanking their lucky stars for coronavirus, as bad as it sounds, because that will have bailed them out, because they're getting all this population movement and rent growth even in the middle of all of this stuff, because of supply and demand, right?
Yeah.
So
A once in a lifetime event.
yeah. So and I hope that people don't take, but I know they will. People are going to take the same wrong lesson from this that they took from the great financial crisis, which is multifamily always does well, and it can't lose, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, because that will be certain people's experience.
Sure.
There will be people out there who will experience multifamily not losing even during this, right?
Yep.
So,
Sure.
but the problem is that, that's an anecdote. That's not data.
Right.
And you can't make decisions based on what one guy said or what one guy experienced.
Yeah.
So I think people may take the wrong lesson from this. People are going to get lucky. The guys who, listen, it could have been the other way around. No coronavirus. We could have had the cities.
Totally different story.
The cities would be fine. And, because of the lack of supply in the cities, there would continue to have rent growth. But some of these guys out in the suburbs, with the economy softening, could have been in trouble. So it's,
yeah.
That's why it always pays to be cautious and be conservative when you're investing, because you just don't know when things are going to get wacky like they are right now.
Yeah. I guess when we kind of wrap this section up, when I look at my market, again, when I look at my inventory, single family rents are up. I mean, demand and rental rates. Again, I would call Fresno a suburb of the big tech and actually LA. But apartments are a little soft, kind of, Anytime you're close together, it's a little soft. I don't. Are you seeing kind of similar things in your data?
Well, yeah, no, what I'm seeing is that single family rental growth is almost 4% year on year.
Yeah.
That's a national figure. And it's a little bit down from last year, but it's still strong. So that's basically pushing against the headwinds. It's still almost 4%.
Wow.
Which says a lot. Multifamily across the country is only up by 1% rent growth. And another interesting fact among the same data that I saw today was that single family, I don't know if you know this, Michael, you should. And if you don't know this, you're in trouble because you're supposed to be the expert. But single family rents, basically over the last 40, 50 years have never fallen even during a recession. Now that's that's nationally. May not, I'm sure there are markets where they have fallen.
Yeah, of course.
Across the board, there has never been
a negative year.
Negative rent growth.
Yeah.
Even in recessions, which is not the case for multifamily. Multifamily definitely has rent declines during not every recession, but most recessions.
Sure.
And in some markets, very, very bad. So, that's.
And again, that's the beauty. That's the beauty of single family, because not only do you have kind of stability, but you also just have the reality that as a single family home investor, you are such a small part of the market, right? Somewhere between 67 and 72% of single family homes are owned by owners, right? They're not on the market, right? Apartment buildings, they're always rentals, right? So you have that kind of supply demand imbalance. So you always have the ability, if you're a landlord, you can always take it off the market, clean it up. Like today, the best market ever to flip. You have a vacancy, today it's like, hey, is it in a B class or better neighborhood? Shoot, clean it up, put it on the market. You'll get top dollar. So we're going to see single family home units decrease, in my opinion, right? A lot of the mom and pop, like if you're a mom and pop investor and you have homes, you're in a little bit of pain now. The eviction moratorium's a problem. It's, you can still have issues, but longer term, this will pass. You will clean that asset up. And if you really are frustrated, you'll just sell and you'll be whole. If you're a mom and pop, you own 5, 10s, 12s, 20 units and you have half your tenants not paying, in that scenario, there's a pretty good chance you lose the property, right? So it's a very different asset. It's kind of amazing.
Yep. It's true.
It's pretty cool. All right, Jonathan, this is a lot of fun. We got 4 videos done today. I really appreciate your time, man.
Thanks very much. This is fun as always.